All right. Okay, I think that we can get started. Hello, my name is Alyssa Likovic. I am doing a presentation on an introduction to user experience. Um, so this is basically going to be a presentation just covering the basics of user experience, what it is, what it is not, like what it's supposed to involve and what it shouldn't involve, and um, a little bit about a lean user experience, which is getting popular. So yes. Um, let's see. All right. So this is basically my information. Um, there we go. So if you need me, my email is alyssalikovic@gmail.com. It is super simple. We're using the hashtag WWC Tampa just now, in the future, and forever. Um, so yeah, I'm the city director and co-founder. So if you have any questions, feel free to chat with me. So a little bit about the Women Who Code organization. Um, it just reached 1,000 members actually, which is really cool. The Tampa chapter is at least 75 at this point. So that's really cool, and they're always giving out really cool opportunities, and they have scholarships, and they let you know when all these conferences are going on. So it's exciting. It's not too overwhelming, but it's really cool. So we can get into defining the user experience. Um, so the Nielsen-Norman group might sound just like a weird group that is just arbitrary and does nothing. But the Nielsen-Norman group is actually really, it's important, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Norman in that group. So they define user experience as user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So that should kind of give you an idea of what user experience is like about, so to say. And all of these slides are going to have links in them so that once you guys like get your hands on it, you can look at it and do some more research. But that's just a pretty basic overview of what this is about. So UX, user experience, and user interface, both are different types of design. You'll commonly see them paired, but they're really different. They have some similarities, and they definitely rely on each other, but they are not the same. So we can start talking about that. So user experience does not equal user interface. A user experience relies on field research, test creation, a creation for web pages or websites, taxonomy. And it also involves facilitation of the people you're testing for your product. A user interface designer, on the other hand, is informed by the problem solved by the user experience tester or designer. A user interface designer focuses on branding and principles, and as well as sketches and designs, which in some instances the user experience designer handles that, but this person is a little bit more like sketchy, like no pun intended. So, and they also do some code. A user experience designer can write code, but they're the person who asks people, okay, what's going on with you? What do you need from us here? How can we help you? And the user interface person is saying, oh, obviously those problems have been identified. I'm going to like put it all together. They're definitely not the final step in the process, but a UI person is definitely the next step after user experience designer. So these are some pretty good images of exactly how UX works as part of a whole. So let's say that you've got this delicious product. So you got like your bowl, your spoon, your milk, and like some cereal and stuff. So you got to start with your data center. You start with where your data is, and that's a little bit deep for this talk, but this is where all your stuff comes from. So you've got this data center. From the data center, you've got your server, all of your little data in it, looking delicious. And then you've got your spoon, which is your UI, which is how you handle the actual data. And then once you get to the user experience, everything is there. It's all tied together, and you know exactly what to do with it. And it is everything in that little bowl. That's your experience. This makes it look like a very narrow field of study, but it's actually super broad. So don't be fooled that it's this easy. It can be, but not always. So one of the fun things that happens on websites like Quora, or where people ask questions about user experience and when it started, the origins of the position of a user experience expert or architect or designer came along around around the 90s. A guy named Peter Merholz was curious about it, and he said, okay, let me look back and see when exactly this started. So he found in some public records and things like that, that at a meeting that some people from Apple Computer were having, they in the abstract, referenced a very one of the first, I think the first instance he found of a job position involving user experience. So in this 1995 proceeding of this paper that he found, it read, in this organizational overview, we cover some of the critical aspects of human interface research and application at Apple Computer, or as we prefer to call it, the user experience. The user interface architect at that time was Donald Norman, who was in the Nielsen. He's a principal of the Nielsen and Norman group that I talked about earlier, who had that really nice summarization of what user experience is. So he decided to change the job title from a user interface architect to a user experience architect. His reasoning behind that is it makes sense. So he says, I invented this term because I thought human interface and usability were too narrow. I wanted to cover all aspects of the person's experience with a system, including industrial design, graphics, the interface, the physical interaction, and the manual. So that's definitely more complicated than a bowl of cereal, but he recognized that he needed to make it cover more as he went on. So one of the big parts of the user experience and being a user experience designer is how are you going to do all of this stuff. So this is a pretty cool flowchart that I found that I think is the least complicated one. So basically what's going on here is you start with a strategy. That strategy is going to differ between whatever company you work for, or if you're hired as a UX consultant, whatever company someone else works for. So you start with a strategy, and you go in with your research. You conduct interviews, you make observations, and you deliver surveys. So from there, once you've got these people, or if you've created personas, you start analyzing, and then you begin designing, and then you produce. So with the design, you come up with workflows, wireframes, and prototypes. And a user interface designer can work within that part of this. And then you go to production. So whether or not you do a beta launch is totally up to you. And so you kind of just go in this infinite circle until you find something and you're ready to launch. This isn't by any means a one-time thing. Sometimes coming up with a really good user experience takes a few iterations of this loop. So don't be discouraged if at first you do not succeed, or if at first you have to go back to research. That is normal. Let's see. So research. So let's talk a bit about what research actually is. So you're researching to understand your users, and one of the ways you can do that is focusing on not only demographics but also psychographics. Psychographics are, well, let's start with demographics. Demographics include, all right, what's like how old are you? What's your ethnicity? Do you have any kids? Whereas psychographics are like, okay, how old are you? What do you do? What are your problems? It's a much deeper understanding of a of a person's personal problems and what their needs are. It's not just, okay, we're looking for like a bunch of 18 to 34-year-old women who all live on this side of town. Psychographics are a much deeper dive into who a person is and what problems you're solving for them. So the best question that you can ask your users is, how are things going? What you should not ask your users is, what do you want from me? Why am I here? Tell me what features you want and I'll leave. Like your goal is to get to know your user's life, and slowly, rather than specifically asking them for what they want, the UI problems will begin to answer themselves. Again, let's reiterate, don't ask them what they want specifically. All right, so part of the fun of the user experience is getting your company involved in user experience, which is not always the best or the easiest. One way to do this is to interview the people who are touching whatever you're creating or providing a user experience to, along with executives, and they will help you get a better understanding of the business. And that way they will get that buy-in, and you will get that buy-in. A consensus before development. Just in development in general, you want to have a good consensus before you start any huge process, especially with user experience design. Make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I think one of the biggest problems with getting a company into user experience design and focusing on things like that is that they know that they're going to have to get a bunch of people to, click through your website or whatever, and a lot of times executives aren't really into that. They don't want to have to pay someone to do that, and they don't want to have to like bring in a ton of people or hire one very expensive consultant. Consultants aren't very expensive, actually. So one way to overcome this whole recruiting problem is by just finding people that you know. Ask friends or family. We'll go into them being impartial in a second. Ask friends and family, hey, can you take a look at this, and just watch them and get their opinions on it, and don't stand over their shoulder for too long, but get their opinions and their ideas on it. Another method that I have heard of and I like is giving out free food or giving out some type of reward, so to say. So if you are totally desperate for users to test with and for users to talk to and get opinions from, what you can do is maybe go to Starbucks, for example, or Panera or whatever. Buy one of those like Christmas wreath sized like pastry boxes, and just put it on a table. And when people walk by, just say, hey, you want one of these? Can I just get your opinion on some stuff, or can I walk you through this? And they will probably be okay with it. It doesn't require a long commitment. It doesn't require them to meet you at like 6 in the morning for like 3 hours of testing. It's a really quick kind of guerrilla UX method of accomplishing your testing. Granted, that's not going to work if you work at like a Fortune 500 company or somewhere that might be like a little bit sketchy and weird, but use your best judgment, and at least that pastry wreath doesn't cost $150, because sometimes with certain testers, they can cost up to $150 per person. So you got to find a nicer solution than that. You have to ask the right questions. Make sure that you understand why you need to test these people. Make sure that you understand what the purpose is of the data that you're gathering from these people. Let them know that they're okay. They should just use your application. Don't make them feel like they're doing the wrong thing. Make sure that the questions that you ask don't have a like totally wrong answer or totally right answer. Make them feel like, okay, so what do you think is the next step here? very open-ended questions, and make sure that you let them know that it's not their fault if they mess up or something, because some people get very upset if they think that they're messing up and they're testing your application. So a little bit more about users. So they're not like you. They might be a little bit computer savvy. They might use like the Facebook or something sometimes, but a lot of times they're totally different. They have totally different lives. They have totally different attention spans and hobbies. They are an individual. They're not, just some weird person. So just because they're not like you, focus on what you ask them. Focus on what in the application you can lead them to that will help them. And your user experience should reflect that, users of all types and ages and backgrounds can get into your application. Users are not that into you. One of the big issues with people who bring in users to test and to research, users don't really have an incentive to care about your product, and they don't really have an incentive to invest themselves into your idea. So users only care only about what your users think of themselves as a result of interacting with your creation. A good user experience leaves you feeling great. It's like when you use your favorite website and you're just like, rainbows and unicorns, that was awesome. A bad user experience can have an extremely negative effect and end up making them feel bad just about themselves, or just about you, not only about your website, but about your company, your brand, and that can have an extremely bad impact on your brand itself. Like I said, get them invested in your idea. Make them feel good about it. Give them a reason why they should be invested in it. Also, account for their emotions. Like I said before, make sure that when you're conducting your research, or when you're testing people, or writing tests, or doing anything like that, that the people that you're using to go through your website or application or anything, make sure that you let them know that there's no wrong answer. They can take their time. They're not responsible if something goes wrong. It's actually your fault, or the developer's fault, or the company that has to fix it for them. Let them know that them not figuring something out isn't bad. That's part of it. Okay, so beware. You need to interview the right people, and that's for a few reasons. So we were talking about interviewing like friends and family and stuff, and that's all well and good. However, you need to recognize that sometimes people do things just because they're trying to be nice. So if you show your grandma this thing that you made, and she's like, wow, that's beautiful, I love it, and you're like, so what do you think, Grandma? Can I improve anything? And she's like, no. I hate to like break it to you, but your grandma's probably lying to you. She's probably not the person that you should be testing your creation with. So a lot of times users will try to be nice, especially if they're personal. Other times, if you just get like a kind spirit who you're testing, they will just try to be nice, be like, oh, I'm sorry, that was my mistake. You let them know that they can be a little bit mean, not too bad, but are they lying? This is also hard to tell because it's like 3D. Let the user, or sorry, are they lying? They might be lying. So there was I went to a presentation about a lean user experience design, and the presenter said that he was once in a research group that said, okay, how many of the people in this focus group wash their hands before they leave the bathroom? And the majority of them said, yeah, we do it. And then they put cameras on the bathroom door where they could see who's washing their hands, and I hate to break it to you, but many of them were lying. So wash your hands, and keep in mind that to save face, sometimes even if no one would ever know who they are, they might lie to you. Don't take it personally. Just understand that it's part of human nature with that. The user is not always right. Just because a user says that something is wrong doesn't mean that it's wrong. Just because an executive says something is wrong doesn't mean it's wrong, but at least they pay you. Make sure make sure that you're not making a decision, a very, very strong decision based on one user. If the majority of users, have an opinion and believe that something is messed up, then of course there's going to be probably an issue that you need to check out there. However, if it is one person and they are just on you about one small thing, you decide if it's worth it, if it's worth pursuing, or if it's something that you need to just let go. Okay, so we can get into research evaluation. So you need to find out where you can begin. Where in the process of research are you? You need to figure out, based on your company, where exactly you need to start this whole process. While you're doing research, it's important to focus on task orientation for people you're researching. Make sure that make sure that your users know what they need to do in order to complete a task, or to complete a task that you give them while you're researching. You also need to take a look at the information architecture. How are things sorted out? Does the user know where they are? Do things make sense? Do users say, okay, I know I'm in this page, which I came from this page, which goes to this page? Do buttons always look like buttons? Is there an architecture in place there that lets them know, okay, this makes sense, this makes sense, just a basic structure. There should be a natural taxonomy within your project or your website. You should start with a large topic. Let's use like books, for example. So if you're running a bookstore website, start with a large topic like genre, and then you can go into a smaller topic like action or sci-fi or something, and then you can go into book names, and then you can go into characters for books. Start with a large object and then break it down in a way that feels natural for the users. Recognize what your users deem important. Users personally feel like certain things are more important than not. If you can identify what your specific users find important and will be delighted to see, use that. As you research, it's good to create 5 customer personas and make sure that they're the same 5 throughout it. Don't keep switching. Create 5 customer personas. Okay, this is Jill. She likes to go to soccer practice. She uses this application when she's at home. This is Bob. He is like a stay-at-home dad or something. He only uses this application when he's at the grocery store. Use cases, basically. And then hopefully in meetings and things like that, someone will say, oh, what about Joe? Or what about this user? And then they'll really start thinking in terms of real people rather than, someone sent them some requirements. Okay. So we talked about user interface design as well as user experience design. They are not the same thing, but they do frequently work together. So user interface design and user experience design right now are kind of like holding hands. So when you're designing with user experience in mind, start with a pencil and paper. It is so much easier just to draw stuff out rather than opening up Balsamiq or opening up, Photoshop. It's a much nicer feeling, at least for me, just to open up a sketch pad and just start drawing stuff. Don't get too in depth at first. This doesn't have to be the first mock-up that you give to people. Do it for yourself first. So start off with something quick. Start off with something that you can work with. A good point of advice for this is to start off with a very small, tiny little design, just to give yourself an idea of what it's going to look like, and then slowly over time or quickly over time, you can expand on that. Crowdsource your design for buy-ins. Again, this is basically appealing to executives and appealing to people who are higher up in the company, who may or may not feel like user experience is necessary. By crowdsourcing your design, you make people feel involved, and you make people feel like, this is something I'm into. And then when the final product goes out, everyone's going to be saying, oh, I helped, and look, this thing I did. Crowdsourcing your design is also a really good way to get a bunch of different perspectives on a few different ways of doing things. So once you have your problems down and you've researched all of that stuff and you're designing, you know what problems you have to solve and what kind of features you need to support. Designing around that with a few different people thinking about what kind of designs you want is a really good way to, make sure that you're not leaving anything out, make sure that, you've investigated all the different ideas that are possible. Know your product before designing. This is important because if you start designing for your product and you only have a very vague idea of what is going on in there, it's going to show in your final design, and it's going to show in whatever your final project looks like. You need to have an understanding of your product in order to have the best user experience, because if you don't, then how is a user even going to be able to figure it out? Have a use case document. Keep a pretty nice use case document and keep it throughout the process. And then that way, you can check things off as you go. Say, okay, we just did this feature, which is for this use case. We just did this thing, which is for this. And ultimately, it's a really nice way to just keep track of all the things that you've done and things you need to do. Testing. So after design, there is more testing. It's so exciting. Try to have some A/B testing pre-launch. Show 2 different versions of a screen. Get some opinions on it. It's pretty basic. If possible, bring in users to test your milestones weekly. Consistent testing is always really good because it keeps you up to date and it makes sure that your product isn't missing out on any huge error where someone just doesn't know what's going on, because even a small change could really affect usability. So consider that there are going to be some weird things going on. There will be back and forth. Most companies do have some type of internal politicking. Don't let that discourage you. Founders and stakeholders may answer their own questions unreliably. A lot of the times, founders and stakeholders will really, they seem like they're up in the clouds somewhere, or that they're on another planet, and they're like, of course people want this product. Why wouldn't they? We don't need a good user experience, or we don't need that. We already have that. Show them data that proves otherwise, and show them data as to what the importance is of this, how it can make people feel, and why it makes people feel that way. So, why should I care? All right. So good UX is powerful. Bad UX is also powerful, but in a negative way, and it makes a big impact in a negative way. So good and bad user experience with some real-world examples. This is a bad user experience for very obvious reasons. They're not usually this obvious, but it is still bad. This is a bad user experience too. I found this on a list called 10 Worst Design Failures of All Time. In Windows 8, the power button is not where it has been in many years previous. It's kind of hidden away, and it's not intuitive anymore. One of the big things about user experience design and with user experience is that if you're going to reinvent the wheel, do it in a way that makes the wheel better. Don't try to do it just for the sake of having done it. This power button thing it still confuses people, and we live in the future, and this power button is just boggling people. Another type of user experience problem is, just with the brand. I follow Brad Frost, who is a big proponent of responsive web design on Twitter. And today he was saying he was disappointed with a certain website's support and that they've been trying to upsell things to him. This is an example of a bad user experience because why are you trying to upsell things to a disappointed customer already? That's silly. It's not just in how your user experience appears or how your user interface is. If your company doesn't have an entirely sound user experience, people will complain and you will know about it. So try to do better. Apple is pretty good about user experience typically. Their products are known for having a good user experience. It's known for a really good community and really easy access to getting help for your products and things like that. They have little moments of delight in their user interfaces, and they're always surprising people. When they announced the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus and the Apple Watch, there were a lot of really awesome experiences that overall will improve the user experience of the newest iPhone. However, after that, they decided to download Songs of Innocence, that U2 album, onto everyone's iPhone, and my friends who don't watch tech events and who had no idea that was happening are suddenly like, holy crap, U2 just downloaded their album on our iPhones. What's going on? Who has all of this power? This is ridiculous. Technology's out of hand, and it just spiraled into like insanity. And I think that was a really, really bad user experience move for Apple in general. I don't want a U2 album. I don't know anyone who wants a U2 album, even if it's for free. But it's I don't know whose idea it was to show like, hey, look, we can do this to anyone's iPhone. But they started writing it wrong when they ended up putting up a page where you can get it off of your iTunes, and they're like, we're sorry. Actually, they didn't even apologize. They're just like, here, just get rid of it. So no more YouTube, which is great. So Google Now, I love Google. Google Now won an award in at the 2013 User Experience Awards. They got grand prize for Best Everyday Utility with Google Now. What this is, for those of you who don't have an Android device, Google Now is super simple. You get on your phone and it shows you these little cards with information about your local weather, places, traffic, flights, translation, time back home, that display based on where you are, if you have anything going on. Typically it also shows things you've recently searched for. So I have
I have one that was a moment of delight for me.
Yeah.
They used my search history.
Yeah.
To know what my 3 favorite blogs were.
Mm-hmm.
Just not because I had bookmarked them anywhere.
Yeah.
But now when new content is available, it shows me right away. I didn't even ask it to do that.
Yeah.
It just knew, oh, you really like the Dainty Squid.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you her new stuff.
It's really cool. And then I think I searched recently for a restaurant around town, and so now it's showing me restaurants nearby. And one time I searched for Nicki Minaj, and so now it's telling me all about Nicki Minaj. And I mean, I could get rid of it, but now I'm a Nicki Minaj expert, so everything is okay.
On my way here, I was using Google Maps.
Yeah.
And it tells you now what the lanes look like. So it's like these 2 lanes go right. This one goes straight, so you can see right there on your phone.
Yeah.
Here's what the lanes are.
Yeah.
It's really awesome
Google.
When you're going somewhere new.
I love Google, and the experience is just great. But with these cards that they have in Google Now, and especially with the Android watches that have come out, they push the card notifications to your smartwatch, and so you get these little notifications, and you can swipe them away, and it's a really pleasant experience. Coming from a company who's had the same web page for many, many years, they really know how to do user interface correctly. They also won an award for this year. They won a gold at the User Experience Awards for material design, which is their new design. Standard. I would call it a standard. Yeah, their new design standard, and so it's very pretty. They have really cool interactions.
It's beautiful. What they do is they break down for example, mobile notifications, icon design. They talk about natural animation. So they'll say if something is swiping in from the left and you are displaying new things, it talks about tracking animation. And it has video breakdowns. It's gorgeous.
They take the colors that are being used and they apply it to the theme for album covers, I think.
Yeah. And
so they just use those colors. It's really, I love it. I could talk about Google user interface design all day. But we won't. So just to tie this up, lean user experience is something that's becoming pretty common. it's interesting to consider, and it just depends on the type of company that you're a part of. So Lean UX is it's a type of approach for certain types of groups. So you have agile user experience, which is for companies that use agile development like sprints and things like that. So the UX design team and development team, they work together, and they're inspired by the Agile Manifesto, forced to blossom by growing popularity of agile software development methodology. Whereas Lean UX, application of user experience design methods into product development tailored to fit build, measure, learn cycles. The design is united with business and development. So it's a bit different. You're going from a world with sprints to a world where you talk to customers, you're solving problems, you have learning. They all both kind of go into that iterative approach, what we're talking about with research and design and things like that. However, Lean UX uses the Lean startup methodology, which is definitely different than Agile UX. But yes, so those are the very basics of Lean UX. It's there's definitely a lot more to go into it, but that is basically it. So thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am here. So, yay. Thank you. All right.